Hello, welcome back to the Early Nerds podcast for episode 6 this time. I am your host, Caleb, and today I have with me, as always, my co host, CJ. Go ahead and say hi to the people today.
Hello.
All righty. I do apologize. I am a little on the sicker side of things today, so my voice is a little bit raspy, and if I'm talking a little too loud, it's because I'm actually trying to get my words out. But today, we are going to be talking about the Primarchs of the Warhammer universe. So we got some exciting stuff coming for you guys, okay? Um, First off, I just want to say thank you again to everyone that's been watching and subscribing and all that good stuff. We really thank you for everything that you do for us, okay? Other than that, CJ, my friend, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So, one of the big things in the Warhammer universe that kind of a must know is that the Emperor of Mankind is kind of this giant, big part of the story. And part of his story is actually creating multiple different sons, quote unquote, in his image. But each of them has a little bit of a different personality, a different style, a different theming. Um, to make a long story short, with the Primarchs, half of them turned traitor during the Horus Heresy, um, while half of them stayed loyal. So we are just going to kind of be going down the line and just talking about each one just a little bit.
Oh, I can't wait to see who we're going to start with.
hmm
Do you want to start with
I
one of your favorites or
well, I figured we should probably just start down the line in order. Um,
like who was found first?
but not who's found first, but just numerically,
Oh, yep.
it's weird.
Yep, that makes
They have a
sense.
couple of different numbering. But topical though, because they were just getting a little bit of a refresh and they're still experiencing a little bit of high from their Primarch just being recently rediscovered.
Mhm.
The first Legion, or the first Primarch, is Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels.
Ooh,
hmm
Mr. Sleepy.
So, hmm
I said Mr. Sleepy.
oh yeah, sleeping on, was it Pride Rock?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically, Lionel Johnson is the ruler leader of the Dark Angels. The Dark Angels theming is very Knights-esque. They are probably the closest to a Knights army that you'll get. Um, very round table-esque. They all have the Knights helmets with the wings and cloaks and swords and all that type of stuff. Um, Lion's a pretty neat guy. He has one of the more interesting backstories in terms of a legion because half the legion actually turned traitor, and kind of led a revolt. The oh goodness, the revolters' leader's name is actually Luther, and they had a really big fight. Um, it's kind of interesting because the Dark Angels are knights in nature, but not necessarily knights in look, but not in nature. Um, the Dark Angels are a lot of kind of I'm doing this in secret. People don't really know about me a lot. They try to do stuff as stealthy as they possibly can. I've heard people talk about how they go in and sabotage records to, just kind of make sure that some of their information just isn't compromised. So they tend to be pretty secretive in nature.
And
But,
how was
mhm.
Lion's story when he was a kid? Was it like one of those sad ones? I honestly didn't get to hear much about Lions.
A lot of the information regarding the lion and his early life has, you know, big surprise, not been recovered, or maybe it was recovered and they possibly just deleted the files. Yeah, they're paranoid, man. So basically, when it comes to the Emperor's sons, imagine the Superman story where you have this god that just lands on your planet and is way better than any other child. Um, Basically, that is the origin story for every single Primarch. But instead of landing on Earth, they're lost from Earth and end up on separate planets throughout the Warhammer galaxy. Lionel Johnson's is fairly decent. His world tended to like green, lush, dense forests. The planet of Caliban.
Mm.
A lot of the animals that were living in the forests, though, were actually mutated chaos beasts um, from Slanesh, which was kind of interesting because it was actually so close to the Eye of Terror. Um, but yeah, so basically the record starts with Lionel Johnson, where these people were living on this world and they were kind of just getting attacked by these big Slaneshi chaos demons, and they're just out here trying to make a living. And all of a sudden, this man in a loincloth just walks up to them. Yeah, he just came out of nowhere and he goes, "Hey, what's up?" And you also have to keep in mind these people are basically gods or demigods, and by like the age of 3 or 4, these things are already 7 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine just having a giant prepubescent teen walk up to you and go, "Hey, what's up?"
Mm-hmm.
It's something. Basically, he kind of learned his knightly ways from his planet. A lot of the individual Primarchs tend to gain or get their kind of niche style from their planet. Heavily inspired at least.
Very
Yeah.
true.
So basically, he was always paranoid of technology, though, because he was raised in wilderness. He never really trusted it. They were telling him, "Hey, we have all these vehicles," and he goes, "No, I'd prefer to ride a horse." So, out of all of them, he's the most pen and paper. I'm not gonna work with technology as much as I can because I don't really trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, leaning into that paranoid aesthetic or motif.
See, I actually didn't know that they were like paranoid about their information and everything like that. I thought that'd be more like the is it the Alpha Legion with
Hmm.
Alpharius? I thought it would be
Oh yeah,
more or less them than the Dark Angels.
they're similar, but there are differences. I guess the boiled down explanation of Dark Angel would kind of be the espionage group of the loyalist factions, whereas Alpha Legion is the espionage faction of Chaos.
Okay, okay, okay. That makes sense now. Do you know how he plays in tabletop by chance?
That I'm not quite sure. I think he's decent, but with 10th edition that just came out, I do believe they already changed his rules, so
Like nerf or
don't
buff?
quote me on that. I don't quite know. I think it was they changed some things for the worse, but they improved some things for the better. I'm not a big Dark Angels fan, so I
True.
didn't really pay as much attention with that.
Yep, yep. Gotcha.
Cool model though.
It is a cool model.
Hmm.
I didn't even get a. I wish I could have picked up him and Angron.
All right. Now we have Legion number 2. Take a guess at who it is?
Is it my boy Agnes?
No, it's not Magnus.
Is it Rogel?
Nope, it's not him either.
Uh,
Legion number 2. We don't know.
wait, it's a question mark.
Hmm. So basically, in the lore, there are 20 sons of the God Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
However, the books and everything that you're reading are basically like second or third hand like stories,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're the propaganda to an extent.
Aren't they like
They're writ. Hmm?
oh, I'm sorry. I was
No,
just
you're
gonna
fine.
say, like, aren't they like things that the Imperium kind of took and twisted in a way and then pumped out to the public? Or
Yeah, to an extent.
okay.
They're written by remembrancers, which are essentially just scribes. But they do kind of try to paint everything in a decent light.
Okay, see, I remember the Remembrancers because I was actually reading about one of them when I was reading Horus Rising.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. But yeah, so basically, um, with the factions, we don't know anything about the Second Legion. We also don't know anything about another legion, which I guess we'll kind of get to later on. But yeah, these two legions were had done something so bad that they have been deleted from all records.
Redacted.
Yeah, so we don't even know. And I mean, if you think about it, the fact that half of half of Emperor's children or the Emperor's sons um, turned traitor, and they are still written about. That has to say something about those sons.
Did they just like keep going around like it's like killing planets?
No one knows. So that's from a lore. That's from a lore standpoint.
Okay.
From a story standpoint, or from a Games Workshop standpoint, this 20. Sorry, these 20 legions were originally thought of way back in the day, and these two unknown legions were kind of Games Workshop's attempts back in the day at allowing the individual to insert their own legion if they saw fit.
No
That was
way.
kind of the idea where you put in your own factions that you came up with, one loyalist, one chaos.
Dude, that's sick.
It is an interesting idea, and I appreciate that. But they just didn't want to say yes, this person's idea is 100% correct. You know, they kind of left it open for each and every individual person.
Man, if what would
Um,
you
hmm?
put in there if you got the chance to?
um, I don't know who I'd put in there. I've heard some people talk about how they actually theorize that that or one of the Primarchs was actually Sigmar
Oh.
from the fantasy side of Warhammer, because he kind of came to their land in a twin-tailed comet. In fact, a lot of the armor and a lot of the motifs that you'll see on, like the Stormcast armor, actually has a twin-tailed comet on it. Um, I'd say that's a cool theory, but also take it with a grain of salt because Games Workshop has yet to say anything about it.
That's that's still pretty cool though. That'd be awesome if Sigmar was one of them.
Oh yeah, but there are some references of these lost Primarchs in stories and books as well. There was one story that, I mean, I've never read myself, but kind of heard second or third hand, where one of the legion's Primarchs was talking to the Emperor's right hand man and say, we could actually get this job a lot, like done a lot faster if we had an extra couple of brothers. And he's like, don't say that. Like, don't you dare say that. There was also another legion or another story where a Chaos Legion, like a squad, had been transferred back in time to while all the Emperor's Primarchs were still being created in their like pods.
Hmm.
and they were like, "Hey, let's go and let's sabotage the other two Primarchs," because what they did was super bad. But
Jesus.
they never really uh, went any further than that.
Hmm. Um, wasn't who's that guy that was the Emperor's right hand man, the magician or the psyker?
Malkador.
Malkador. Yeah, wasn't he strongly against him creating the Primarchs?
Yeah, basically he was like, you realize that these are going to be 18 or 20 kids that you have to take care of, right? And he goes, yeah, I know. I'm going to do it anyway, though.
Do you think like that's why some of them were like why Biggie was like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. I already got to deal with Perturabo. Why would I want another Perturabo?
All right. So, third Legion and Primarch is Fulgrim of
Oh
the
God,
Emperor's Children.
Jesus,
Oh, yeah.
hate this guy.
Fulgrim is super, super vain, always interested more in how he looks and what people think of him than anything else. He is very vain, and he wants to kind of be just like the Emperor, and hence the name. Um, Basically, long story short, he was. I mean, all the Primarchs are kind of jerks in their own way to an extent.
Mm-hmm. True.
He was a little bit more of a jerk just because he's like, oh, I'm handsome. You know, I mean, handsome Squidward. You
Bro,
know, look at me.
bro,
I'm beautiful.
bro. The craziest thing is that man wasn't even the most best looking out of any of them. It was Sanguinius.
Oh yeah, and people like Sanguinius more, which was one of the reasons why he was a little salty.
Yeah, he was just jelly.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry. I had to
no, you're
put that in there.
yeah. I mean, you're not wrong though. I mean, he was very vain. He was always kind of super petty. He was definitely frustrated that he was being shown up by Sanguinius and was less liked than Sanguinius. But he was one of those guys where he's like, oh, what does he have that I don't? I'm hot. You know, I look good. I mean,
I
he's
don't.
basically if Derek Zoolander was a space marine.
All I can think about is that stupid meme that everybody keeps posting now when there's like Sin City. Then they do the Zoolander face.
The Blue Thunder or the blue something.
Yeah. And just imagine Pilgrim just doing that with his fancy sword dancing that he does.
Oh yeah, I I bet he does it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean his homeworld wasn't necessarily anything to write home about. It was a mining planet. Um, but at the same time, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible.
Hmm.
You know, it basically just imagine a giant mine shaft, and that's his entire planet.
I'm picturing the Spice Run shaft in Star Wars.
Basically, they were very no nonsense. We gotta work, which is kind of interesting considering Fulgrim became so vain. But I mean, with the lack of the arts on his home planet, I guess once he discovered them or rediscovered them, he was like, I gotta make up for lost time.
Hmm.
Yeah, so basically, from what I understand, Emperor came to him, they kind of got along until they didn't. Um, and then eventually he got his soul trapped in like a mirror or a painting. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and then he was also given a sword. Slaanesh reached out to him and was slowly kind of corrupting him and kind of saying, "Hey, if you want perfection and you want to feel, you want to be, appreciated. I appreciate you. In fact, through me, I can make you better." And especially with kind of feeling like he was second fiddle to Sanguinius and some of the other Primarchs, he kind of leaned heavily into that. Um, and he wasn't the first to turn traitor, but he was kind of the first to he was actually the first one to kill another Primarch. The Emperor's children are very excess. A lot of their armor is, boosted with stimulants or just melted into their flesh for perfection and excess. Um, they're grotesque. They're gross, but they're kind of interesting in a way because a lot of them still kind of maintain that air of class to an extent that some of the other chaos factions wouldn't or don't have,
Hmm.
which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, so after Fulgrim was corrupted, he became a giant sexy snake person.
I'm a slithery little snaky snake.
Snake.
Didn't did Fulgrim like have a little run in with Jagatai?
Yeah, so we'll cover Jagatai a little later, but he and Jagatai also didn't get along because Fulgrim was very showboaty and, oh, look at me, I'm the best, whereas Jagatai is like the complete opposite.
Hmm.
He's good, but I don't think he'd ever actually say he's good. He's much more reserved, and he kind of had an issue with his brother being so vain about himself and about the others. So, but yeah, definitely once Fulgrim became a giant demon Jagatai, and he and Jagatai had a lot of beef after that, and is partially the reason why Jagatai does not make many appearances right now.
Yep.
Hmm.
Good old Jagatai.
Oh yeah. Next up, we have Legion number 4. Sorry, yeah, 4. Goodness. And the Primarch Perturabo, your
Uh,
favorite.
no. Skip. Skip. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So, the Iron Warriors is Perturabo's Legion. Most people's probably least favorite, I'd say. A lot of people, I hate to say a lot of people who say he is because he is vain. Um, I honestly don't really know why Perturabo turned traitor. Um, a lot of people just say that he did just because.
If I remember correctly, I believe it's because I think that like the straw that broke the camel's back was when the emperor picked Rogol Dorn
Rogaldorn.
to build the castle instead of him, like the
Oh
city.
yeah,
Yep, I think
I
that
mean
was,
Perturabo was always just a giant grump, though. He kind of came in already being unhappy about the situation,
mm-hmm,
and then someone kind of said, "Oh, I'm gonna pick this other person over you to do
mm-hmm.
a job that both of you can do," and he was just like, "That's it, I'm done."
You done did it now. I'm
Oh
going
yeah.
to chaos.
Well, and it's interesting because he's not even like obsessed with chaos like the other Primarchs are.
Nope.
The other Primarchs devote themselves and worship their gods if not want to become gods themselves. Whereas Perturabo is just like, yeah, I'm gonna summon a demon, I'm gonna capture it, I'm gonna put it in a machine just to spite you,
And the
like
whole
you over there.
yeah, and the whole time he's in chaos too. He's just sitting in a tower. He's not even doing
Oh
anything.
yeah, yeah, he's a big grumpy baby,
Man child, man.
just a little bit.
God, he's such a dick.
I actually kind of like his Legion though. I'm not a big fan of him.
No. His Legion is pretty
Um,
cool, not gonna lie.
oh yeah, they are all about like siege and fortifications as well. Um, in fact, a lot of the Primarchs that didn't turn traitor, at least a couple of them, ended up in a giant maze that Perturabo constructed because he was like, "Oh, you want him? You want Dorn to build your castle? Well, I'm going to build a castle that you can't escape." And so he just builds a giant labyrinth and to kind of like mock them, where he traps a bunch of Space Marines and their Primarchs and they try to escape. The Iron Warriors are pretty cool though. I like their aesthetic. They're very they rely on machines, but they don't. I guess they don't necessarily over rely on machinery like the Iron Warriors would.
Hmm.
So they're close, but they're also one of those factions that some people might claim are just evil versions of a loyalist faction.
Yep.
But I think they look pretty cool.
They do look cool.
I like the little caution stripes down the sides. All right. Next up, Jagatai Khan.
My boy.
Hmm. So he was, like we were saying earlier, one of the more subdued and quiet individuals. Uh, if I'm not mistaken, his homeworld is Tagorith, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, basically his whole thing is, I mean, his whole faction is all about thrill of the hunt. I mean, he's very obviously modeled after Genghis Khan, but a little more, a little more chivalrous. He's a little more polite. Want to say their nickname is like the Laughing Killers, not because they're insane, but because they actually enjoy a good fight.
Yep.
So like riding their speed bikes and going really fast.
Orcs of the Imperium.
Pretty much.
Yep.
It was also he's a little more of a rule follower than most of the other Primarchs. Probably second because we also have the Blue Boy Scout,
Mm.
Gilliman.
Ultra depression.
Oh yeah. But yeah, he's probably second most rule following or I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
No, he's a pretty cool guy.
Oh yeah.
Faction's pretty cool too.
White scars are pretty dope. I hate the paint.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. That is one of the main reasons why so many people that I've talked to do not use the white scars is just because it takes so many layers of paint to get that nice even coat of white over the armor.
Yep. That paint sucks.
I will say their new spray paint though, there is really easy. And if you're looking at doing a white scar armor, use their new white spray paint because it actually doesn't leave grain on it. It's a nice matte even finish that you can paint on, so
Oh yeah.
maybe look into it.
If I remember correctly too, when the Emperor had found Jagatai, I
Hmm.
believe he had already taken over his world and killed the other warlord there.
Oh yeah, he, like we were saying earlier, he's definitely inspired by Mongolian, uh, you know, Genghis Khan, and a lot of that is included in his backstory, where, like you were saying, he wasn't just sitting around like a lot of the other Primarchs. He was actually doing stuff, and like you said, took over his world.
Yep.
He is probably one of the top Primarchs that I would say I would like to see again soon,
Yep.
and that has a possibility of coming back.
In case you didn't know what happened to him, he went chasing Eldar booty through a webway.
Oh yeah. Was it regular Eldar or was it
I think it's
Dark Eldar?
I think it's Dark Eldar booty.
Yeah. Then he basically saw them and was like, "Oh, you kind of remind me of your brother, or remind me of my brother Fulgrim," and chased after him. And then as he ran into the portal, and all of his men were like, "No, no, no, don't do that." The portal closed behind him, and they just have no clue where he is. He was just lost.
That is my favorite story in the whole thing. It's just so stupid. It's legit the definition of Leroy Jenkins. They're just like
Oh yeah.
out there, just like, God damn it, Leroy. But that's honestly, if of being correct, that's pretty accurate to something that Jagatai would do. I have no reason to doubt that he wouldn't do that because
Oh no.
I believe in one of the books that Jagatai is in, he actually there was a couple he was fighting some orcs on some planet. I can't remember what it was, but
Hmm.
the orcs were starting to overwhelm the forces of them, and then Jagatai was like, you know what, I'm just gonna grab my two swords and I'm gonna just start swinging them insanely fast and see what happens. And he started doing that, and he was just chopping down hordes and hordes and hordes of orc armies. And then he got them to about to where there was like only like maybe a whole squad or two left, and they're just like,
Hmm.
oh God, we got to get out of here. So they ran into a building to try and get away from him, and then Jagatai just runs in there after him, and all you hear is just screaming, and then Jagatai walks out.
Nice.
Well, so he's
Yeah, I mean,
definitely Leroy.
yeah. And his legion are also one of the other legions that are like, yeah, no, we're gonna fight because I like fighting.
Yep, fight, fight, fight.
Hmm.
Gets a
Next up
crumpin'.
is, what was that?
I just say gets a crumpin'.
Next up is Leman Russ of the Space Wolves.
Wolf boy. Woo, woo,
Leman
woo.
is probably the easiest to understand. His legion is probably the easiest to understand. They're space Vikings.
Pretty
They,
dope.
oh yeah, some of them are wolf or like werewolf hybrids. They rely on giant space-based like wolves from planets that they ride into battle. They're space Vikings. Um, a lot of people say that Russ is basically just the jock of the family.
Yep.
He's all about buff muscles and fighting and drinking beer, which is interesting because in order to make a space marine, part of or one of the organs that they install in you to become a space marine actually nullifies poison, which also nullifies alcohol. And instead of just taking it and just going with that, the Space Wolf faction thought out a extremely poisonous herb that grew on Russ's planet and distilled this poison into an alcohol that they could drink and get drunk on. It is one of the few things that they can actually become inebriated by.
Gotta love them.
Oh
Got
yeah, if you offer or if a guardsman or a regular human drank that, one drop would kill them. But they're just drinking it, like just downing bottles and bottles of it.
I didn't know that. Is
Oh
is
yeah,
is that what the Emperor and Lehman were drinking?
I'm not sure. I
Oh,
mean, the Space Wolves make Fenrisian ale,
Jesus.
but yeah, it is extremely bitter and only used because it kind of nullifies their poison gland.
Real quick,
Hmm.
I just wanna tell people about this. These are the names of some of these space wolves. Like everything ends in wolf.
Oh yeah,
It's Canis Wolfborn, Cyber Wolves, Farajan Wolves, uh Harold Death Wolf. Let me see. Let me get one more. Lord Fangs, M- Murder Fang, Storm Wolf, Wolfguard, Wolfguard Terminators, Wolf Lord on Thunder Wolf, Wolfen,
if you couldn't get enough wolves, you put a wolf on a wolf.
Wolfen Dreadnought. It's just Space Wolves.
Oh yeah, they definitely they do what they say on the tin. But yeah, Lehman Russ is very much what you see is what you get. Um, he likes fighting with his fists, or at least with, you know, things that his fists can carry. He's really, really not a big fan of magic and the warp.
Yep.
He does not enjoy his brother. Uh, what's his name?
Magnus.
Magnus. Yes, he does not enjoy Magnus or his legion at all. They are like oil and water.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, later on, after the big rift in between brothers, uh, Russ was kind of contacted to take his brother in uh, for questioning, essentially, Magnus. Because they're like, Magnus did something wrong. We want him to be brought in and be, you know, we want to basically try him or, kind of just have him atone for his mistakes.
Magnus did nothing wrong.
And Russ goes, okay, yeah, I'll beat up that nerd. I'll do it.
he went.
Um,
he he pulled a Bane. It just straight up
oh yeah.
broke that man's back.
Well, and it's interesting because they were at first they were just like, yeah, bringing him for questioning, and he's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then, unbeknownst to him, another one of his brothers called, and he had just turned traitor, but Lehman didn't know that. And he goes, yeah, just kill Magnus. And he goes, oh yeah, I'll do that. Like
Yep.
without hesitation, he was on it.
Magnus was actually going to go in peacefully too, and he told his troops to surrender as well. And but his troops and everyone else wanted to fight.
Oh yeah. But yeah, Lehman was like, yeah, I'll take him in for questioning, I guess. And then as soon as they're like, okay, you can kill him, he goes,
Dream come
really?
true.
All right, I'll do it. But yeah, so Wolf Boys and Magic Boys do not get along. He is also one of the Primarchs that may possibly be able to come back because he's still alive. He's just missing.
His model would be dope. I'm natural
Might be
enemies
interesting.
with the Space Wolves, but his model would be dope.
Oh yeah. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, uh, Russ is also in the warp.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is.
Alrighty. Number 7 is Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists.
I love this guy.
Dorn is all about defense and building, very much so like the Iron Warriors, but I'd hesitate to say that, you know, I I, I feel like Dorn would be better and his Legion would be better actually building defenses, whereas I feel like Perturabo and the Iron Legion are kind of more blockades or I'm going to build like machines type stuff. Um, there's not much personality there, but that's kind of as a design. He, if you look at his character, he has a crew cut. So yeah, he's very. Everybody says that Rubute is kind of the vanilla boy, but I'd hesitate to say that Rogel might also fit under that umbrella too.
I think they're equally both vanilla.
Oh yeah.
I feel like one of them is Vanilla Ice, and the other is Macklemore.
Rubute would be like the tax man of the office,
Mhm,
whereas Rogel would be more, well, Rubute would be accounting.
mhm.
Rogel would be more just general workhorse.
He'd be like loss prevention.
Yeah, I could see that.
Ma'am, you didn't
Yeah.
pay for those sandals. Pulls out a sword with a chainsaw attached to it.
Oh yeah. He is a pretty cool guy though. He is all about building and improving. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he was born on a planet, but he kind of like made spaceships to travel from planet to planet, and I think that's how the Emperor discovered him. They just kind of bumped into each other in space, and he goes, "Hey, that's a really nice spaceship. Do you also know I'm your dad?"
I'm your daddy. Didn't he have like some dark age ship?
Yes, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but yeah, that was one of the ships that he kind of used quite frequently. And it's, I say ship.
It's like a floating city.
Have you played Halo before?
Yes, I have.
You remember in Halo 2 when they showed High Charity
Yep.
and it was literally a planet with a rocket booster built into it?
Yep.
That's basically the planet or the ship that Rogaldorn uses or used.
Mm-hmm. Cruising in style.
Oh yeah.
Made the
Uh,
Emperor's
a
ship look
lot of
small.
the Imperial Fist use shields or at least, are really good on the tabletop in defense. They're one of the better factions, if I'm not mistaken. I will say Rogel Dorn himself is MIA. Actually, nobody has any clue what happened to him or if he's even alive.
I believe he is.
He could be.
Didn't he just lose his hand?
Well, the hand was the only thing that they found. So, yeah, eventually, Rogel Dorn also kind of had like after the Horus Heresy, he also kind of felt a little bad because he was like, "Oh, I'm kind of one of the reasons why the heresy started, or at least one of the reasons why the heresy kind of happened the way it did."
Mm-hmm.
He felt like his defenses in the city of Terra, that was supposed to save the Emperor, didn't do its job, and now that the Emperor was gone, he's like, "What do I do?"
Like,
Um,
kind of did the custody thing, put himself in shame.
kind of. From what I remember, he used something called a pain glove,
Mm-hmm.
um, which kind of supposedly gave him visions of the future, um, or at least visions in general. And some of the visions that he saw were, I have to redeem my legion. I have to redeem myself in the eyes of the Emperor. And the only way to do that is through sacrifice.
Yep.
So he and his legion went on a bunch of crusades, basically to atone for Dorn's failures. Um, Eventually he ended up with dealing with the Iron Warriors. He and the Iron Warriors and the Imperial Fists are also really not getting along because their Primarchs kind of had beef about who was going to build the city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so basically all of the Primarch's men were had died. They were being killed left, right, and center. He I think they called for backup, and the ship was on its way um, to give him backup, but he was by himself, and he was surrounded by Imperial fists. And by the time the backup arrived, all of the Iron Warriors that were all around him were just slaughtered. Um, there were just bodies everywhere, and the only thing that was left was of Dorn was his hand in the paint glove,
I personally believe he got off scot free.
and he gets a cool Terminator hand.
Seriously. Imagine
That's
if he.
also another Primarch that I would love to see post Heresy, just because of the writing that they did for him after the fall was so good. I want to see more.
Yep.
You bring Lehman Russ, yeah, he's cool, but I don't think he'd really change much personality wise from pre heresy to post heresy. I think a lot of that, you know, would be Gilliman and Dorn kind of coming to terms with the new world in the way that it is.
Yep. That would make for some pretty interesting character arcs. I honestly haven't even read. Does Gilliman know that Lion's back?
I don't know. I haven't really been doing a lot of reading into the new stuff just yet.
I gotta figure that out because I've been waiting to see how Gilliman would react with seeing one of his brothers again in so long.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the last that I've heard is they just discover the lion, and I don't quite know what happens after that.
Okay, okay.
Next up is Conrad Purrs of the Night Lords. Conrad Kurz is probably the most sadistic of all of them. Um, you know, all of the other Primarchs kind of have done bad things, but Kurz is just evil. His planet is literally a planet that is enveloped in darkness, that is lit up by lightning every once in a while, but it's eternally dark.
Yep.
You know, that's kind of why their armor looks the way it does, and why their skin is so pale is just because they don't see light ever. His legion is made out of prisoners that have basically been coerced into joining a Space Marine legion. All of his legion is just insane individuals that are just sadists.
Yep.
Um, basically, all the other Primarchs crash landed on the surface of their planet, whereas he crash landed and just continued going into the center of the planet, and he just crawled his way out.
As an infant.
He's the little demon child. Um, in terms of his legion, they are they rely on terror a lot. Um, someone said that basically Kurz is like an evil Batman to an extent
Yep.
that really relies on that fear aspect. Um, he will torture and maim and dismember, and a lot of his Space Marines just carry flayed skin as trophies.
Don't they wear it too?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Flayed skin cape.
hmm
Yep. Or even a nice
Kurz is
little fanny pack.
Kurz is interesting to an extent just because I can't remember why, but he has this ability to see into the future. Either that or someone told him his future, and I can't remember which it is.
He has the ability to see possible futures, if I remember correctly. It's not that he could
Yeah.
see it, but he can like see a something that could possibly happen. I believe when
Oh yeah.
he shook either it was Vulcan or someone's hands, he's seen his death and everything that would play out. Like he's seen literally the Horus Heresy before the Horus Heresy even happen. I think it was Sanguinius' hands that he shook.
That makes sense. He and Sanguinius basically have the same thing, actually.
Hmm.
The difference in what their powers do, or the difference in their powers, is that Kurz believes that the future is unchangeable and whatever you do will lead up to that point. Whereas Sanguinius believed, you know what, I can actually change the future. This is just a possible outcome.
Yep.
Whereas Kurz was like, nope, I saw it, it happens, it will happen no matter what I do.
Yep. Isn't there a story about where he thought that this kid he touched this kid and he thought that he would, well, he's seen a future where that he would become like a crime boss or something like that, and he would kill a bunch of people, and then he's seen another possible future where if he let him go or something like that, that he would like go down the straight path and become a father and stuff like that, and he was like, I can't take that chance. Shot the kid and like snapped the kid's neck.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I believe,
Yikes.
if I remember correctly, like he sees two possible outcomes for some people, like some good, some bad, and he is
Mhm.
not a good judge of which one is the one to choose. So he ends up always choosing like, yeah, you're gonna pick the bad one because I know how people are on this planet, so I'll
Right.
take you out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Conrad. He is one of the Primarchs who is dead. Canonically, he like you said, he saw his death. I can't remember what it was. I think it was just an assassin. Um, and because he believed that everything was set in stone and there was no way to change it, when the assassin showed up, he just goes, "All right, do it."
Yep. And
And
I
the
think
assassin just like, "Oh, okay."
she did it, bounced, and then got captured. They
Oh,
tortured
that
and
was
killed
easy.
her.
Oh,
Yep.
nice.
That's what you give. I
Those
don't
scary boys.
exactly. I don't know why anyone in their right minds would go after their leader.
Well, he's not around anymore, so that's a plus.
Nah, very true.
If I'm not mistaken, a lot of his faction is much more, someone said Slavic inspired.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. A little bit more like boogeyman type stuff,
Oh, okay.
which leans well into his character. Sanguinius is the next Primarch of the Blood Angels.
Dude, I wish he. Man, I'm not even. You go ahead. I love Seguidia so much.
Everyone does.
He was like the
Sanguinius
first
was,
person you taught me about when you told me about Warhammer.
oh yeah. Sanguinius is probably one of, if not the, I'd hate to say wholesome, but the most well liked, at least. Just about every Primarch got along well with him to an extent. Even if they didn't get along well with other Primarchs, or just with people in general, they had a little bit more of a soft spot. Um, I want to say there was a story where eventually we'll get to Angron, but Angron has something called the Butcher's Nails implanted into his head, which basically anytime it doesn't, like anytime he's not angry, it gives him pain. And there was one day where he was just talking with his brother or thinking about his brother, and he goes, "Hey, it, I'm not angry, and it doesn't hurt."
I never
Yeah,
knew that.
I mean it was for a brief second, but still, Sanguinius was probably the most well liked Primarch out of all of them.
Dude, he's the goat.
Oh yeah, interestingly enough, he was the only Primarch that Horus was actually afraid of. Interestingly enough, the Blood Angels, his faction, part of his legion, or at least the when they were trying to kind of not necessarily reverse engineer, but when Sanguinius's Blood Angels were being created from Sanguinius's gene seed, um, Chaos was able to sneak in and kind of corrupt it a little bit. They originally were trying to destroy the gene seed altogether so that he wouldn't have a legion at all, which would make it a little easier to take over um, the legions, just being down one less legion to have to worry about.
Hmm.
But they were able to salvage it. But part of the salvaging process of the Blood Angels was that it actually left them with a defect where the Blood Angels are, essentially become bloodthirsty vampires. Most of the time they can subdue it, but occasionally they'll get something called the Black Rage, where they just become feral, and there is just no way you can control them. Most of the time, they don't let it get that bad, but there are times where, there will be legions or factions of the Blood Angels that, or squads at least, that know that their time is coming soon, and so they'll unleash it on the battlefield to take out enemies in hopes that the enemies will also kind of kill them in the process.
Yep.
So they'll kind of go down in a blaze of glory. But it was kind of interesting because that was a really big secret, and no one was supposed to know. And there was one time that Horus, the first found Primarch and arguably the Emperor's favorite son, was fighting alongside Sanguinius. And they were like, "Oh, Sanguinius, you're so perfect. We love you so much. You're such a great guy." And one of his or a couple of his guys started getting this black rage, and they were just foaming at the mouth and starting to become a little feral. And Sanguinius just slaughtered them right then and there. He just cut them down.
Jesus.
And Horus had no clue what was going on, and he goes, oh my, okay then.
So I was just standing there like, what just happened?
Oh yeah, which is probably one of the reasons why Horus was actually afraid of him,
He's like, yeah.
because he goes, "Oh, there's this perfect guy, and is I don't know what happened. He must have a secret."
He just looks at him, just like while the guy's home, he's like, excuse me for a second. Schlink.
Oh yeah, basically. Not black rage, red thirst. My bad.
Oh yeah. If I remember correctly
Um,
too, I think Sanguinius was so powerful that the emperor actually gave him a sword that he would actually see every person that he would kill with his sword.
hmm,
Yep.
that makes sense, especially with his ability to kind of see the future.
Hmm. So it kind of made him more humble. It might not have been Sanguinius that got the sword, but I'm ninety
Hmm,
percent sure that it was Sanguinius that the emperor gifted that sword to. It was either him or
that makes
Lion,
sense.
not Lion.
Well, I know the lion at least has the Emperor's shield,
Yep.
and I know Gilliman has the Emperor's sword, but I don't know if that's the same sword.
Nah, this one was like, I know the emperor's sword's like on fire, but this one had like blue
Yeah,
magic stuff around it, kind of almost like
yeah, it's a different sword.
Abaddon's,
Hmm.
but not the same thing that Abaddon's does.
Right.
Abaddon. Am I saying his name right?
I don't know what the correct pronunciation is actually. Some people say Abaddon, some people say Abaddon,
I like
but I
Abaddon better.
think I think depending on the region, the pronunciation is different.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Sanguinius is one of the Primarchs who is dead. He died during the final battle. He was one of the final casualties to end the war, though. And he kind of went into it knowing he wasn't going to make it,
Hmm.
but he put up a fight.
He went out like a boss.
Oh yeah. I mean, he fought in the trenches with his men, fighting alongside them, pushed back a bunch of the offense, like the Chaos Warriors or the Chaos Soldiers. Um, Fought a demon prince, or at
Hmm.
least a demon that was like ripping up his men.
Then fought
Fought
Angron.
another one of his Primarch brothers. I think it was,
It was Angron.
yeah, it was Angron, which which Angron kind of wasn't happy with. He liked Sanguinius, like
Hmm.
I was saying. Um, and then made it to the capital ship that Horus was on, and still put up a fight.
Mhm.
In fact, if it weren't for Sanguinius putting up the fight he did, the Horus heresy might have ended very differently
Mhm.
because he ended up putting wasn't the killing blow, but he ended up putting an opening in for the Emperor to finally just delete uh, Horus from existence.
Mhm.
He's just gone.
Just Thanos snapped out of existence. Kamehameha, whatever you want
Yeah,
to
I
put
mean, he
it.
just, from what I understand, in the Warhammer universe, when you die, you don't die. Your soul kind of just gets transported.
Hmm.
Whereas the Emperor not only killed his physical form, but deleted his soul from existence. Every other individual who has died or will die in Warhammer universe can technically be brought back in one way or another, except for Horus.
I actually think Horus came back one time, but a Abaddon or Abaddon immediately killed him
Hmm.
because I can't remember who. I think it was. I want to say it was Lorgar. He brought him back, and then Abaddon was like, "Why would you bring Horus back?" And then he's Horus like, as soon as he gets up, he's like, "You have my claw," and like starts pointing at him, and Abaddon's like, "This is mine now." So he takes it and he rams it straight through his chest.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I'd hesitate to even say that that wasn't even Horus though.
Yeah, it was like 25 or 50% of his mind, not even like the whole horse.
Yeah.
But he was just mainly more like a feral animal, I want to say. Is that the right thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Ferrus Manus. He
Is
is the leader. Hmm?
Sorry, I was about to say, isn't this the first Primarch to die?
Yes. So Ferrus Manus is the Primarch of the Iron Hands. He's one of the characters that didn't necessarily get a ton of backstory. He's the blacksmith, kind of like
Vulcan.
Vulcan, but at the same time, it's more so his faction that is a little more interesting. Um, like I was saying, Ferris is one of if Ferris is the first Primarch to die, so there's not a ton of story behind him. He's pretty blank slate. Iron Hands are cool though.
They are pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So the Iron Hands, basically, one of the cool things about Ferris Manus is that he has like some liquid, almost like adamantium, on his hands, which are literal. I want to say they're from Necrons, if I'm not mistaken.
Necrodermis.
Yeah, I think so. But in a way to be closer to their Primarch, because they can't really get Necrodermis, they just do the next best thing. So they just cut off their arms and they just replace it with actual iron machinery. Their war cry is "the flesh is weak," um, and so a lot of them seek perfection through cybernetics. A lot of the models that you'll see in the Iron Hands faction have cybernetic arms or legs or eyes, and rely a lot more on technology than any of the other factions do.
I forget how much these people love their Primarchs because ain't no way I'm cutting off my arm just because I like a guy so much. Commanding officer or not, like I'm not cutting my arm off.
Right.
These people are just like gung ho to do it.
They are pretty cool.
They are.
Um, but at the same time, there's not as much backstory behind them as the other factions. Varys Manus is the first one to die, like we said a couple of times already. He did die to Fulgrim. Fulgrim used his Chaos Sword to cut off his head, and that's about it. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else about this gent before we just move on?
Um, I don't think there's much. I mean, the only other things that I can remember about him is that um, I can't remember what war it was, but at the drop site, I can remember which number it was when the Horus Heresy first kicked off. Ferris was
Probably
down.
Istvan 5.
Yep, yep, Istvan 5. Is that what it was?
I think so.
Um, when they were there, Vulcan, I believe, was there with him, and
Hmm.
they were pretty much getting attacked from all sides, and Ferris ended up getting pretty much his head cut off by Fulgrim,
Hmm.
and Vulcan actually got taken captive by Conrad Kurz.
Oh
But
yeah.
other than that, that was pretty much the end of his story.
Oh yeah. In in terms of the Iron Warriors or the Iron Hands, they're probably the least liked Space Marines in terms of like regular people, just because a lot of the Space Marines tend to be kind of elitist already because they think they're better than everyone else they're protecting. But the fact that they're just simple humans with no augmentations kind of rubs them the wrong way as well.
I got a question for you, real quick.
Hmm?
What faction would you be in if you were at Warhammer?
Oh goodness! Out of the Primarch factions, or just any faction?
Any faction.
I'd say my favorite faction is probably the Space Sharks. They're cool.
So you'd be a space shark, summoning, doing psyching shark stuff.
Yes, I'll be doing psychic shark stuff.
Dude, I love their psychic abilities. It's so cool. Like they just summon a big shark. It's so
Yeah,
sick. I would.
you might enjoy the fast boys.
Oh yeah, I would probably be part of the White Scars, or honestly, I'd probably say the Custodes, like the Adeptus Custodes specifically, because you know they're kind of like Asgardians.
Big golden boys.
Yep. I don't want to be the ones that's just standing there doing nothing.
Kind of most of them though.
Yeah, that was until Gilliman came and told him like, get out there. There's a war out there.
You want to leave it at this, and then we can do a part two later.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah,
Cool.
heck yeah. All right, folks. This has been episode 6 for the early nerds. Make sure you guys come back and see us for part 2. Other than that, you guys have yourself a beautiful day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.